Good evening, everyone. Good evening, members of the committee, members of the public. I will now call the Committee of Adjustment to order. As this meeting is held electronically due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I will go over some rules and procedure for the benefits of the members and the viewing public. So this meeting is being streamed live via the City of Brantford YouTube account. All members of the committee will be muted upon entering the meeting and throughout when they are not speaking in order to reduce background noise. All webcams for committee members shall be turned on throughout the meeting. If a member does need to leave their seat, please leave the camera on so we recognize that you are away. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should they need to answer questions of members. Any member of the committee participating shall indicate that they wish to speak or ask questions by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen. Your hand will stay raised until you're called upon, and staff will lower your hand digitally when you're being called upon by the chair. Movers and seconders of motion shall be indicated by raising your hand on the camera, and the chair will call out who the mover and seconder are. All members of the committee participating via online video conference will vote by a physical show of hands. A recorded vote will be taken by the clerk. Applicants, agents, owners, and delegations are participating via Zoom or telephone. Accordingly, all persons who wishing to speak to the items on the agenda were required to register by 9 a.m. this morning. Any delegations received in written format have been provided to the members of the committee and will form part of the meeting record. In the event that a connection service interruption occurs that affects quorum of the Committee of Adjustment, we may recess up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting is adjourned. So I'll now ask the clerk to take the attendance.
Tara Gaskin?
Present.
Virginia Kershaw?
Here.
Christina Brooks?
Present.
Perfect. Lee Reiner?
Present.
Greg Kempa?
Present.
And Chair Nemesniak.
Present. So I'll ask at this time if any of the members have any conflict of interest for any items this evening. So seeing none, I will provide the typical explanation of tonight's events. Again, for the benefit of the committee and for those watching at home or rewatching in the future. So this meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss minor variance, consent, and severance applications and give members of the public an opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, or provide comment either in support or against the application. Each hearing is generally dealt with in accordance to the order that they appear on the agenda. In the event that the hearing is not completed on this date, it will be adjourned to a later date at which time the committee may hear further submissions. At the conclusion of each hearing, this committee will make a decision on each application. Those names of individuals who speak on any item tonight will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing further notice of any hearing, including a copy of the committee's decision, please contact the City Clerk's Department. Minor variance decisions are final if no appeals are received 20 days after the committee's decision, and consent decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the notice of decision has been issued. So tonight's order of delegations are as follows. We'll have the applicant or agent join us at the table to present the details of the application. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or agent. We'll then go to planning staff to present the details of the report, followed by an opportunity for questions. We'll then open up the public forum for any members who are present to speak this evening. And I'll note at this time that we do not have any members who will be speaking during this meeting this evening. However, we do have a number of letters that we did receive for consideration earlier this week. And then we'll have an opportunity for final questions of clarification. following which we will make a decision. So with all that out of the way, we'll go to our first item on the agenda. So this is a minor variance application for 107 Ash Grove Avenue. Is the applicant agent. That doesn't look like a messy office. Different kind of office this time. So Mr. Phillips, just introduce yourself, your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bob Phillips from J.H. Cahoon Engineering Limited. I'm here representing Carriage View Homes and the owner of the property being Steve and Heather Martin. The application is for a variance to the lot grading or the lot coverage provisions of the bylaw. They are proposing to put a small addition on the rear of this house, which is going to house a master bedroom and ensuite, and has resulted in the lot coverage exceeding the bylaw. So the request is to increase the lot coverage to 42%. We actually only need about 40.7% based on all the dimensions, but we leaving a little room for construction errors. We've read the planning staff report and are supportive of the recommendations, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Is there any questions from the committee to the agent? I see no questions. So we will invite planning staff to the table, and we'll have staff present the details of the report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sean House. I'm a planner with the Community Development Department here at the city. And I'm here because staff have received a minor variance application for 107 Ash Grove Avenue. The property is located on the north side of Ash Grove Avenue and is designated residential area low density in the official plan and zoned residential type 1B and R1B zone. A one-story single detached dwelling currently occupies the site. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to construct a one-story addition to the northeast corner of the existing dwelling. Next slide. And on this slide is a photo of the backyard of the subject lands. Next slide. To facilitate the development as proposed, the applicant is seeking relief to permit a maximum lot coverage of 42%, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 35% is permitted. For a minor variance to be approved, it must satisfy the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And in staff's analysis, we've determined that the proposed variance is minor in nature, as it's not expected to have any adverse impact on neighboring properties. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development of the lands, as it is consistent with neighboring dwellings and will facilitate the addition. And the intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan are both maintained, as the variance will still provide adequate outdoor amenity space in the rear yard and not result in an overdevelopment of the lands. Next slide. This application was circulated to all property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands. No objections were received, and in fact, 1 letter of support was received. To conclude, the proposed variance meets the four tests of the Planning Act, and staff recommend that application A12-2020 be approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Do I have any questions from the committee members? I see no hands. So I will move on to the public portion now. So I'll just note that as this meeting is held virtually, members of the public wishing to speak to each item were required to register by 9 a.m. today. And I'll note that no members of the public have registered to speak to this application, noting that the one applicant or the one letter, sorry, was received in favor that was circulated to the committee earlier this week. So I'll close the public portion and I'll ask the committee members if there are any further questions of clarification for this minor variance application. And seeing none, I will ask the committee if they're ready to make a decision. Virginia?
Yes, I'll recommend that application A12-2020 requesting relief from that section of the zoning bylaw to permit a maximum lot coverage of 42% be approved.
And we'll be looking for a seconder. Greg? Does the committee members have any discussion on that motion? Okay, and we will call the vote and it will be a recorded vote.
All members in favor of the proposed motion, please raise your hand and leave it raised until your name is called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Christina Brooks, Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner, and Chair Nemesniak. Item 3.1 has been approved unanimously on a recorded vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So moving on in the agenda, the next item, another minor variance application A11-2020 for property located at 156 Glenwood Drive. And the applicant's present this evening. Okay, George, welcome. I'll just have you unmute yourself before you speak.
Trying
And
to, there we go.
perfect.
Is it working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Had an
Thank you.
interruption here for on screen.
So I'll have you introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is
and your
Sir,
address, and then you can present your proposal.
Okay, excellent. My name is George Ziotek, and I'm the agent for Miss Melissa Baranski, and the property is at 156 Glenwood Drive. My address is 10 Humberstone Avenue here in Brantford. And shall I continue?
Perfect. And perhaps we can have Melissa introduce herself as well.
Okay.
So hi there, my name is Melissa Baranski, owner of 156 Glenwood Drive.
Perfect. George, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee. The minor variance is for a front yard setback on the west side of the property, or on the severed portion of the property. There was a little bit of a I don't know, misunderstanding, I guess, as it's written in the report, that portion of Humberstone Avenue is not noted as a legal street, apparently. And my assumption during the whole severance process was that the existing building that is at 837 Colburn Street would have a front yard to the severed portion of 156 Glenwood Drive of 3.2 meters on the west side of that property, which is in line with the existing 837 Colburn Street property. During the whole severance process, that was approved, but I guess somehow or other there was a miscommunication, misunderstanding, whatever. And that's why we went ahead and basically put forth this minor variance to allow for that 3.2 meter front yard setback, as opposed to the 6 meters that's required by the zoning bylaw. And I'm assuming that that's basically the simplicity of this request.
Perfect. Thank you, George. Do you have any questions from the committee to the applicant? I just have one, George or Melissa, throughout the severance process, did you have a kind of a site plan in mind during that process?
Yes.
Kind of where the entrance would be, where the driveway would be?
Yes, that was all submitted to the severance application.
Okay.
Now, I noticed that in the minor variance, there was reference that there is no indication of a site triangle indicated on the plan submitted, but that was basically submitted for the registered plan to our, what was it, 8361. It does show the site plan or the site triangle at the southwest corner of the severed property. So it is there.
That's right. I think the report did mention that all conditions have been fulfilled, and I would imagine that providing that part on that reference plan would have been dealt with
Correct.
at that time.
Yeah.
Any further questions of the applicants from the committee? Seeing none, I will pass the mic over to staff. Invite them to the table to present the details of the report.
Chair, members of the committee, planning staff have received a minor variance application for the property at 156 Glenwood Drive. The property is located on the north side of Glenwood Drive, east of Humberstone Avenue. The property is designated residential area low density in the official plan and is zoned residential type 1B zone in the zoning bylaw 16090. The property was created through consent application B15-2018 from the lot at 837 Colborne Street. The applicant is proposing to construct a single detached dwelling on the currently vacant lot. To facilitate the development as proposed, the applicant is seeking relief from section 7.3.2.1.5 to permit a minimum front yard of 3.2 meters, whereas 6 meters or the established front building line is required. In order for a variance to be approved, an application for minor variance must meet the 4 tests of section 45 of the Planning Act. The reduction in the minimum front yard is minor in nature because it is not expected to have an adverse impact on adjacent properties. Next slide. The front yard is consistent with setbacks on the adjacent buildings along Humberstone Ave between Colborne Street and Glenwood Drive, and therefore will not adversely impact any of the existing buildings. The minor variance is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land, as it will facilitate the infill development. The intent of the front yard regulation in the zoning bylaw is to create a uniform street edge and provide sufficient area for landscaping. The proposed front yard setback will provide this adequate area and is in keeping with the character of the setbacks of the adjacent buildings along Humberstone Avenue between Colborne Street and Glenwood Drive. Section 18.11.2 of the official plan lists criteria for minor variances, including the provisions for and access to off-street parking to be provided on the lot. The provided driveway and parking will be located off of Glenwood Drive flankage. Planning staff are satisfied that the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw is maintained. Upon the completion of the site visit and the review of all policies, planning staff are supportive of the application. The minor variance as proposed will facilitate appropriate infill development that makes efficient use of the land. As this is a type of development that represents good land use planning that is encouraged by the Planning Act, PPS, and growth plan and the official plan, and meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Staff recommend that application A11-2020 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from the committee to staff? I see no hands. I have one, just kind of going through the process of how this would have come about. Is it at all related to where the driveway is, where the driveway access is proposed along Glenwood? opposed to the abutting street? Is it because it's on a corner lot?
Through you, Mr. Chair, or to you, Mr. Chair. The frontage of the lot, as it is a corner lot, is considered the shorter of the two, which is the Humberstone Avenue, which is why that is considered the front yard.
Okay, that's good. That's helpful. Thank you. Any further questions from the committee to staff? Seeing no hands, so I will open up the public portion of the meeting. I will note that once again, any members of the public who did wish to speak during this meeting would have had to register, and I'll note that no members of the public have registered to speak to this application. And I will close the public portion and ask the committee if there are any further questions of clarification to the applicant, or agent, or staff. And seeing none, I'll ask the committee if they're prepared to make a recommendation. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that application A11-2020 requesting relief from the City of Brantford zoning bylaw 160-90 be approved as shown in the minutes, or sorry, in the agenda.
And I'll be seeking a seconder to that motion, Lee. And we will have a recorded vote, or sorry, any discussion on that motion at all? Before we go to the vote? No discussion, so we will call the vote. Vote will be recorded.
All members in favor of the motion before you, please raise your hand and leave it raised until your name is called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Christina Brooks, Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner, Chair Namizniak. Item 3.2 is carried unanimously on a recorded vote.
Thank you, George. Thanks, Melissa. Moving on to our third and final item of the evening. This is one that we did deal with before, back in February, I believe. This is another minor variance application, A04-2020 for 11 Manor Place. The applicant present this evening? Mr. Lesky, welcome.
Yeah. How are you doing? Sorry, I just lost you for a second there. Can everyone
good.
see me okay? Or actually, I don't even see myself. Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
Sorry about that, guys.
Much
How's
better.
everyone doing today?
We're getting by.
All right. Okay.
So I'll just have you, again, just for formality, present your name and address, and then the floor is yours to kind of present, what your findings have been since you last came to us in February.
Yep. Okay. My name's Jason Lesky. I live at 11 Manor Place in Brantford, and I'm going to be seeking the relief for the zoning bylaw for my structure. Right now it's a little too close to the pool. They have it measured here 1 meter from the swimming pool, where 1.5 is required. I actually measured it again today, and when the previous measurements were taken, the safety cover was on, so it's actually a little bit more than it's like around 1.4. Not like it's 1.04, not that close, but it's just over that 1 meter. So we're closer than it says in the paperwork. We're further apart than the paperwork. And the other is the eaves. It's located 1 meter from the property, where I'm asking, and the allowable is 0.3 meters from the required. So I'm asking relief from that as well. Just going to go over to kind of get you back up to speed. I'm not sure if you guys remember everything from our previous meeting. We sat and we talked, and we were close to finding out having it passed or not in our last meeting in February. and it was pretty much ended at, we didn't really know legally, like what would happen if the city would be liable. Lee brought up that, and I've since went and I've got some information for you. So just basically, just wanted a quick refresher how this came to, I don't know if you guys know how this came to be. It was a complaint from a neighbor that we've been battling with since we moved in. And it's been a nightmare and a black cloud hanging over our property ever since. And it's affecting all our other neighbors too, from calling the cops and throwing stuff over our fence. And it's just, it's pretty crazy. So, and she's been active at it, dealing with this, trying and meddling in this as well. I took out all the proper, I didn't take out all the proper permits when I did install this structure. I had a company to do it. They told me that no permits were needed because the enclosed area portion, it did not exceed the square footage as needed, but I didn't realize, they assured me that I didn't need a permit because I do have an open section, which is a bar, which you'll see in the pictures that I've attached as well. It was a referral from a friend. They said they were happy with their work. I didn't really dig further. I trusted what was being built, and it does not, it was a little too close to the pool. It wasn't built totally to spec what the city wanted. So we actually had to hire an engineer to come in and beef everything up. The city was, the bylaw, I think it's bylaw was on me or the building department was really on me to beef up everything. So I had to hire a different company this time and beef up everything, and also hire an engineer as well to put in the countermeasures to make this structure sound enough to the city of Brantford to allow me to proceed. And after doing all that, I'm still in risk of losing it. So I was, wondering why we would go forward with all that stuff and then, possibly have to take it down on top. But since then, I've went through a lot. I've done my due diligence on the other end. We left the meeting. We were supposed to go and find stuff out from the lawyers. I'm just reading off here, just some notes here. A letter was, YouTube was attached to me from Alexandra. She forwarded me a YouTube clip where Joe addressed the ongoing issue here and was seeking, not to go forward with the application. The whole reason pushing off this was to get lawyer information. And in that meeting, he never stated that they did reach out to a lawyer, that they reached out to the the legal department of the city. I didn't do that. I hired 2 separate lawyers to get the right information and make sure that I just didn't bring you one. I brought you 2 findings to make sure. So, I feel that that information could have been brought forth, from the city's department back in February. I did attach, I'm sure that all you guys would have got all the data that I've attached. There was several forms, 2 lawyers for my insurance company as well. I also went in and bought the city records of finding 2 previous situations regarding minor variances to do with swimming pools, which were both approved. And oddly, they mirror exactly what I'm asking relief for. So in one of the letters from, I think it's Blanche Moore, and this would be Benjamin, states, that the decisions that there needs to be consistency in decision-making before any level of court, tribunal, and it's necessary and fundamental component of the rule of law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just reading this so I sound real smart. But that's the findings, what they found. The insurance company that I spoke to, my insurance company, they also supported, said obviously, I have more than enough liability in my house to deal with anything that does happen in that area, and I would be fully insured, which is also attached to the letters. There's 2 minor variances, one seeking exactly the same amount setback from a pool shed to a swimming pool, exactly 1 meter away, which was approved by a minor variance. So all that information is enclosed below. I didn't I didn't know how we were supposed to proceed with this. I would have had this to you guys a lot quicker. I submitted it probably around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought I had to actually present it and load it in here. So it's a little different way of doing things. So if you had time to check that out, it clearly states everything. David Maltby, he was the other lawyer, also states in there the consistency and that, you know, anybody can sue anybody, but it's his decision that it would not stand up and they would not, and I would have more than enough liability to handle anything that took place in my backyard.
Very good. I will note that we did receive the additional pictures and interpretations and, you know, opinions that you gathered and provided, which is helpful as part of our review. We did receive those today, so we do have them, and I'll ask at this time if any members of the committee have any questions of Mr. Leske. And seeing none. I'll also make mention that we have received, you know, a number of the letters, some for, some against, as part of the circulation process that we have received and we have reviewed for consideration. So if there's no hands, Greg, if you do have a question, just throw the digital hand up, and then we can kind of go in order. So Greg, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Which came first, the shed or the children's climbing swing set?
The shed would have came first. Yeah.
And did you have the swing set? Was that professionally installed as well?
Oh no, my father-in-law installed that. That is a swing set bought from Costco. It looks like pretty close, but I think there's about a 6-foot section in between the two structures.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course, not a problem.
Virginia, question?
Yes, I just wanted to know what is housed in that shelter or the building structure?
Yeah.
Any pool equipment?
Yes, yeah. There's some pool equipment in there, and there's also electrical panel that houses. There's an electrical panel in there, breaker panel on breakers, and that's actually where the kids go to change. And when the pool toys aren't being used, all the inflatables, they go in there, and we kind of put them away. So if it's not being used for change, we just house all the inflatables back there, and then we take them out, and the kids go in there to change, so they're not tracking water into the pool, into the house.
And what portion is enclosed for the change room versus an open bar area?
Yep. So that open bar right there, that's the area that this contractor said this does not count for square footage as it's covered. It's not contained. That's what they told me, and I was satisfied. Again, I don't deal with this stuff. I don't know. That's why I hired them, and I didn't find out till after the fact. I've been stressed out ever since this was brought to me. I'm just, it really has been like a black cloud around here. We haven't, if you could see at the top, those are solar lights. We were planning on doing some other stuff in here, and we just didn't want to finish it off. I have actually a shower you can see just above the rooftop, which has not been installed just because of the uncertainty of your decision. I didn't want to go forward. So there was some plans that we've held off just because we didn't know.
And did I see in one of the pictures that the pump itself is behind this structure?
Yep, the pump itself is in behind so that's the reason for the overhang. So it protects the mechanical. That's why the overhang is as far as it is. Oh. So it protects that equipment.
Okay. And
the electrical is inside the
yeah. And why is it on an angle like that? Why didn't you put it straight? Why did you angle it in towards the pool?
Well, because it runs like it's a funny lot shape, and it runs perfectly the proper distance away from the fence. It's just the pool's actually put in on an angle, not the structure, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's a funny shape. It's a reverse pie shut shaped lot. So
Okay.
there's a straight line that goes along, and my structure runs complete. Yeah, you'll see what I mean? Perfect. Thank you for whoever's doing that. And part of the reason too, it was an added bonus that, you know, the pool did kind of cover a little bit of the shallow end. It provides some sun relief for the kids, as it's an open pool. You could see right there, there's no shade at all. And we got young kids, 3 and 7. So they're in the pool all day long.
And when did you construct it again? I'm sorry, I wasn't here in February, so I'm just trying to catch up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's been constructed for about, I would say, well over 4 years. I would say close to that was built, and the reason why anything came to be is because well, he was 3 at the time. He flicked on the switch of the pump, which put some water to drain some water off to the north side of the property, which put some water in that neighbor's backyard. It wasn't a lot. It was on the first step. So, you know, an inch in a pool is quite a bit still. And that's what started the feud. And that's why the neighbor has been coming at me, you know, calls into cops lots of times. And since then, you know, we've tried to remain cordial as possible, but, you know, we're younger and they're in their 80s, and, you know, it's been tough. And there's been a lot of issues in the neighborhood with that neighbor, not just with myself.
And it looked like you had other outbuildings on your lot?
Yep.
There's more in the corner, I think I saw. Is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep, there's proper permits that were taken out for all that.
Okay.
And I had to beef up that garage that you see over the cursor. That's been there for a very long time before I even bought the house.
Okay.
Yeah, previous owners had that. Previous owners actually had a like where that pool house was. They had a big shed there too. It was like a big, like decrepit shed that I got electrocuted pretty good taking it out. So we replaced it and just made sure it was safe.
And did you install this pool?
No, ma'am.
No, it was there.
Installed.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only been here 6 years, I would say.
Okay. And one of the concerns raised was that people are jumping off the structure into the pool. Is that happening?
No, it's not. My kids are 3 and 7. This neighbor is making up stuff. I read that and I was like, I've been like sick about this ever since reading that. I'm like, how far are you gonna go?
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, no problem.
Thanks, Virginia. Good questions. Any further questions from the committee before we go to staff? Seeing none, so we'll invite staff over to the table and they can provide us with a bit of background and some details in the report.
Chair, members of the committee, as you are aware, this application originally came forward on February 19th, 2020, and was heard by the Committee of Adjustment. The application requested relief from section 6.3.2.1.8 to permit an accessory building to be located 1 meter from the pool, whereas 1.5 meters is required, and section 6.4.1.1 to permit eaves on an accessory building to be located 0.1 meters from the southerly lot line, whereas 0.3 meters is required. The Committee of Adjustment voted to defer the application for the following reason: to allow staff time to seek legal advice on behalf of the committee regarding the liability of the Committee of Adjustment in the City of Brantford of approving Variance 1. In response to this request, planning staff followed up with the city's legal department. The city solicitor provided the following response to the Committee of Adjustment. I have reviewed my bylaw and it appears the city solicitor is only tasked with giving advice to council, administrative staff, local boards, and subsidiaries of the city. This Committee of Adjustment is not a local board and therefore I cannot provide them with legal advice with respect to this matter. The legal department represents council and not the Committee of Adjustment. The role of the Committee of Adjustment is to ultimately make the decision to approve or refuse the application based on the issues and merits of the application. The Committee of Adjustment decision is to be based on the 4 tests of the planning, Section 45 of the Planning Act. Liability should not be included in the decision making as is not the planning issue. The intent of the zoning bylaw is to uphold public safety and is planning staff's opinion that there is a concern regarding the proposed minor variance and does not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act as outlined in the report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the committee to staff?
Sorry, also as a point of clarification through you, Mr. Chair, staff ultimately, the owner had provided that information to us today. And for clarification, every minor variance application is separate and must be evaluated against the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Each planner also has their own opinion, and I cannot speak to the opinion of the other planners. It is my opinion that the provided examples from the existing application differ from the existing application at hand and do not represent the same safety concerns. The example at 99 Woodlawn is, in my opinion, different from the variance application at hand. The pool is in that case, it was an above ground pool with deck, fence, and railing and stairs between the shed with no overhang of the building. In my opinion, making difficult or a different safety is not a safety concern of the same issue. The application at 55 Mount Pleasant also differs from this application, as the 1.32 meter distance is comparable to the 1.5 meters required, and provided an adequate distance between the pool and the dwelling with no overhang, and was not considered a safety concern at that time.
Okay, thank you. Good information to have as we work towards considering a decision here. Any questions of staff? Virginia?
Yes, I have one question. I know it's kind of outside this application, but when I look at the overhead of that property, it seems like the lot coverage is quite significant. Is it within the bylaw? How many buildings he's got there? Was that looked at when this matter came forward? What's the coverage that he can have for that area?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. When this application was submitted, it was submitted as the building department had those violations, and that was not considered a violation. And the permitted is 30%, but it's not a concern.
Is it within the 30% then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Casey, I see you've put your hand up. You'd like to provide some comments?
Hi, Casey Pongrass, Senior Planner in the Planning Department. I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. Lot coverage, the main building is permitted to be 30%. Accessory structures can be 10% in addition to the 30%, unless they are attached to the house. So it would be the accessory structure, the pool structure itself and any other shed would be permitted to have 10% lot coverage. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Casey. Any other questions from the committee to staff at this time? So seeing none, we will open up the public portion for this application, and I will note again that apart from the letters received, some for, some against, as I mentioned, that we have had a chance to review, no members of the public have registered to speak to this application during this meeting this evening. So now I'll formally close the public portion, and I'll ask if the committee has any questions of clarification to the applicant or to staff. Lee?
the legal opinion sought by the applicant. I'm not able to see those. Can we put them on the screen? Is that possible? It says there's two letters that were obtained. Hired two separate lawyers which have provided letters attached. I didn't get the attachments.
I believe our clerk is working on bringing those up on the
Okay.
screen.
I can only see the pictures. If I can just read those, you can go ahead with your next question. That's fine.
So we do have the letters provided by, or the opinions provided by the applicant that we did receive this morning. That's what you're seeing up on the screen now. Do I have any other questions from the committee for of clarification? Okay, so based on that, if the committee feels like we have all the information that we need, whether it be through questions or through the information provided as part of the first meeting in February, as well as the additional information received as part of this meeting, I'll ask if the committee's prepared to make a motion. So, Virginia, you're supposed to raise your hand digitally.
I can't find it on this screen now. The lawyer's letter's taken up the whole screen. Sorry,
That's okay.
I can't find the race screen.
That's why I couldn't see your hand.
Yeah, I know. I'm going, While we're perusing this, the planner did say that in her planning opinion, these two applications were not necessarily similar to what we're deciding on tonight. Is that right, Alex?
My opinion would be that these applications are separate. This one is to be reviewed under its own merits and against the 4 tests of the planning section 45 of the Planning Act, and I would assume these are different. Say they're different.
Chris, I see you there. Question?
Yeah, so my question is it the eaves that, I can't remember, is it the eaves that is too close, like the overhang too close, or is it the actual corner of the building that's too close?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 2 variances at hand here. The first variance is for eaves in regards to the proximity to the lot line. So that's at the rear of the building. And the variance in regards to the proximity to the pool is for the physical structure itself. So from the building edge.
Okay, thank you.
Greg?
This is the only hand I can find too, Mr. Chair.
Maybe in this shared screen view, it's a little more difficult.
I guess I'd like to caution the rest of the team that this committee asked for a legal opinion from our solicitors. And as I read that, they suggested that it wasn't in their purview to guide this committee. And I appreciate the idea that they had about the 4 tests, but I don't know how strongly we should rely on counsel that is not in-house or at least commissioned to be asking questions from on our behalf, as opposed to being opinion just being unsolicited given it to us. Make sense? Thank you. I saw Lee waving his hand, by the way.
Lee, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Are we in the comments portion, or are we still asking questions? I have more a comment for the committee as opposed to questions.
Yeah, I think if the committee is prepared, we can start to get some motions on the floor so that we can have more commenting type information shared by each member. If there's questions of clarification, I'll give one more opportunity. So if there's no more questions of clarification, we will look to put a motion on the floor, and I'll just remind the committee members that we did defer a decision back in February, and that decision or that recommendation at that time was approval of both both minor variance applications for the accessory structure being located 1 meter from the existing swimming pool, as well as the setback for the eaves, provided that it is too close to the rear property line or the interior side yard property line. So that was the motion on the floor, that was the original recommendation. And I know we have some procedural kind of speed bumps to get over here, but and we'll work through it together. So I'll ask at this time if any members have any comments or would like to move any new motions to deal with this application.
Mr. Chair, as a point of order then, if there was a motion on the floor that was set aside for the deferral, and Julia will tell me if I'm off base here, but if there was a motion on the floor that was moved to deferral, the deferral has now been exhausted. So unless I'm mistaken, and if I understood Julia, there is a current motion on the floor. No?
Hi, members. So that is accurate. So the deferral in February, a motion was placed on the floor to approve all of the variances that were put forwards. During the course of the debate, a secondary motion was put forwards for a deferral to seek legal information. So the deferral carried, but it's deferring the main motion. So currently what's on the floor before you, without need for a mover or a seconder, is that all minor variances be approved. And members are able to debate that, the merits of that associated with the item itself, and would need to dispose of that motion prior to any other motions being placed forward. So Greg is correct that there is that motion on the floor right now as it stands to approve both.
Is that clear to everyone? So we do have a current motion on the floor based on the previous recommendation, the previous discussions at the February meeting, that the both items listed within the variance application be approved. Is there any discussion on that motion? Lee?
I'm sorry, I can't find the electronic hand to put up either. Originally, when I was looking for was legal opinion. So now we've had 3 separate councils in the form of 2 letters and one through staff, and none of them have really answered the question that I was trying to look for. The one lawyer speaks to how we should maintain consistency. The other one speaks to how private insurance is not affected. And then the third is saying that they essentially can't give us any counsel. And what I'm looking for is how a decision by the Committee of Adjustment could affect potentially something in the future. So as it stands, I can't vote for an approval. I still don't have the information that I'm looking for to say that if the Committee of Adjustment was to approve this, nothing could come back towards the city.
Jay, I see your hand. Unfortunately, our portion for clarification has ended. So we're in a discussion period right now based on the motions that are on the floor. So discussions are exclusive to committee members. Greg?
Mr. Chair, to what Leah said, I would agree. We've not The question that was asked in February in Lake Virginia, I was not there, has not been asked, or sorry, has not been answered. So I don't know that you have any new information now that you don't have in February. I would, I guess I would echo Lee's concern, or rather, I assume his concern there. My suspicion is that if something goes wrong in an attempt to move from the roof of this shed because of its proximity into the pool, if something goes wrong, then the only people that will get rich will be the lawyers, and the city would be named. Because some lawyer somewhere is going to say the city of Brantford said it was okay, and or the city lawyers will go to task on that. They will fight back and they will say no. But I suspect we'll be named because you always name the people with the deepest pockets in this situation. So I have no legal standing to say that, but it's my suspicion of what will happen. And if there is some concern, I would suggest that we proceed cautiously if that is your issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments on the motion from any other members? Virginia? Oh, I see your hand.
Haha, I
Both
found
hands.
it. Yeah, I have to echo Lee and Greg's concerns. I'm not comfortable with approving that overhang at all myself either. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate that you're in this situation, Mr. Lusky. I feel for you, but I just can't in good conscience agree to an approval of it. Thank you.
So Virginia, you mentioned one portion of the application there being the overhang. I'll just clarify that the application does identify two variances required.
Mm-hmm.
One for the building itself and one for the eaves. In our current report from staff, we do have two different decisions.
Yep.
One is for refusal of that accessory building.
Yeah.
And one is for approval of the setback from the eaves from the property line. So
yeah, I can't agree with what's on the floor right now. I would much prefer the original staff recommendation for the different one being refused and one being approved. Yep.
Okay. If there is, there is the option to withdraw this motion if we want to simplify things and kind of start over in terms of discussing and forming a motion, and allow an opportunity to do that now if there was anyone that wished to do that. Greg?
Does that withdrawal have to come from the person who originally moved the motion?
No, it does not. Chris?
I think I moved the original motion to defer. So if it makes it easier for procedural rise to withdraw the motion, then I'll withdraw it. I'm not, if it makes it easier, and if I did it, I can't remember if I did, but I know I was the one asking for the legal opinion. So if it makes it easier for us to proceed, for me to withdraw, then I will withdraw. If that makes sense.
Members of the committee, through you, Mr. Chair, this is Julia Sipple in the clerk's office here. So Christina did move, Ms. Brooks did move the deferral. The deferral's already been dealt with. The original motion was placed on the floor by Ms. Gaskin. There are two options that you can do at this point in regards to the committee. So if someone moves for a withdrawal of the motion that is pending on the floor, by consensus, we could withdraw the item. If anyone objects to that, then we would need a formal motion to moved and seconded and a formal vote to withdraw the motion. The other option is You can take what is on the floor currently, and the chair can call the vote, and you can vote accordingly. If the approval of both fails, then a motion to introduced, such as the staff's recommendation or otherwise, can be introduced at that time by a mover and seconder.
Virginia, question?
Julia, are you able to put up what's we're talking about right now? Because I think, well, I know I'm getting a little confused now. I just want to see what we're looking at or what we might be withdrawing or otherwise or voting down, just so we're all on the same page.
We are lucky to have the clerk's office on our side here to walk us through this.
She's awesome. She's much better than the previous lady.
So through the chair, the motion that is before you here on the Word document is what's before you automatically. So the motion associated with the accessory building be approved, and then the eaves be approved, and the reasons be that it's minor in nature and in keeping a general intent. The original staff recommendation was to refuse this. So it was be refused and be approved. And if you give me a minute, I can pull that up instead. But this is the motion that's directly in front of you now.
Lee?
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I can move that we withdraw this motion as it currently stands, and then I'd like to put forward a new one.
I would second.
So Lee has proposed or suggesting the withdrawal of the motion that we see here on the screen, which is our automatic motion that we've been dealing with since from February. Are there any objectors to withdrawing this motion for approval of both portions of the variance? So there are no objectors of that. So now we have an opportunity to put a new motion on the floor, and I would need like we normally do it. I would look for a motion for a first and a seconder, and then we can discuss. Lee?
So I would move that essentially the first recommendation be put forward. It's off the screen now. The wording was that the variance for the eaves be approved, but not for the other one. So I would move that application. Oh. So I would move that application A04-2020 requesting relief from section of the zoning bylaw to permit an accessory building be refused, and that the variance number 2 to permit the eaves on the accessory building to be approved.
So Lee, are you suggesting that we vote separately on vote on A and then vote on B individually? Or would you like to group them together?
I would group them together. I think we'd be okay to do that, if that's possible.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor based on the recommendation that's in our report. Can you scroll up on the screen back to so we can see A and B? The motion proposed is as we see it there, and A and B, and we will vote once for each item. So I'll be looking for a seconder. Greg? So any discussion on this motion? Again, the motion is to refuse the variance for this the accessory building setback from one where 1.5 meters is required, and to approve the eaves setback from the southerly lot line. Any discussion on that? Everybody understand what we're voting for? Greg, discussion?
Mr. Chair, would you prefer the two items be separate? Does that make life easier for us and for the team?
We can keep them together
Right.
as Lee intended.
Okay, so then my comments, Mr. Chair, would be that the eaves off the back of the building, I don't think there's any harm, any foul in what's going on back there. It seems to be a bit of an easy one. Planning staff didn't have any issues there for. So on that issue, I have no concerns. On the location of that shed and that proximity to the pool, I think it's a dangerous situation. Whether it's the eaves hanging over the pool, which I think is an accident waiting to happen. It'll happen at ages 13 and 17, not 3 and 7. But I think that's an issue. The reason that I asked the applicant the question I did is I wondered whether or not they were just tight for space when that building went up. And it doesn't sound like they were. Jockeying that thing 2 feet to that way away from the pool, we wouldn't have this discussion. I think the safety concerns here outnumber anything else. And if it's not a safety concern about somebody going off the roof, it's a safety concern for 2 kids chasing each other around that pool, trying to get through a narrow space, and one's going to go into the water. And I guess the third point now is, I understand the building's up. And to Virginia's point, it's a tough position for this applicant to be in. But at 1.5 meters, there is a reason that these bylaws are put in place. And I went back on the last 2 decisions, and I recall the one with the above ground pool and the deck and the fence. And I remember thinking at the time that because of the elevation of that deck, it would be that much easier to get over a fence and get into that pool. And for that reason, it was a safety issue. And that's why my vote was different on that particular application than the other. I feel for the applicant, but I think this one is wrought with potential for danger down the line. And I can't support looking the other way on Part B of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I understand it's difficult to provide comments when they involve safety. It does weigh heavily on your mind. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll also add and just clarify that the motion also includes items C and D, which are the reasons for refusal and approval of each of those items. So just to capture that in the minutes as well. But there's no further discussion on the motion on the floor. Everyone's comfortable with what we are, what the motion is, and what decision we'll be voting for. If there's nothing further, I'll call the vote.
All members of the committee in favor of the motion before you, please raise your hand and keep it raised until you hear your name. Virginia Kershaw, Christina Brooks, Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner. All of those against the motion before you, please raise your hand and leave it raised until your name is called. Dana Mizniak, Tara Gaskin. The motion before for the approval of the eaves and refusal of the building has carried on a recorded vote of 4-2.
Thank you, Jay. If you have any further questions, clarification, feel free to reach out to staff. We can walk you through a little bit of what just happened, kind of give you a little bit of more understanding of the process and what options you may have. Okay, thanks for joining us this evening and providing us with the additional information. I'm sure staff will be in touch. So moving on in the meeting, in the agenda, that concludes all our items this evening. I will ask if have all the members had a chance to review the minutes of the previous meeting. That would be our June 17th, 2020 Zoom debut. And if you don't want to watch or read the minutes, you can go back and watch. Any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Greg, Virginia, seconder. And we'll call a vote to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and keep it raised until you hear your name called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Christina Brooks, Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner, and Dana Mizniak. The minutes are approved unanimously on a recorded vote.
Thank you. Are there any other items for discussion this evening? Anything from staff or from clerks? Nothing. So with that being said, we can call the meeting. This will be the end. Again, thank you for joining us. Thanks for your input and your time in reviewing the applications. Have yourselves a good evening.
Stay safe, everyone.